All right, let's talk about one of the most exciting and, let's be honest, sometimes terrifying parts of starting an e-commerce business, importing from China. We're going to break down the 5 most common money traps that catch new importers, and more importantly, show you exactly how to sidestep them.
So let's just dive right into the big question, right? Why do so many people who are just starting out actually lose money on their first few shipments? They've got a great product idea, they're excited, and then it all goes wrong. What's actually happening here?
You know, the answer is usually way less dramatic than you think. It's almost never some super complex scam or just because doing business in China is risky. Nope. The truth is, it almost always comes down to a handful of predictable and totally avoidable mistakes. Okay, let's kick things off with the absolute number 1 mistake, the single biggest reason profits evaporate into thin air. And that's not understanding the true cost to get your product from the factory to your warehouse. I mean, you've seen this, right? You're browsing Alibaba, you see a product for $3, and you think, wow, I can sell that for $10, $15. I'm gonna be rich. This single thought right here is probably responsible for more failed businesses than any other. That $3 price, that is just the tip of the iceberg. So you need to forget the factory price. The only number that actually matters is your landed cost. This is the real deal. It's the total all-in price to get that product from the factory floor across the ocean through customs and sitting in your warehouse ready to ship to a customer. And this chart just says it all, doesn't it? That $3 product can easily turn into a $7.50 product by the time you actually have it. And if your whole business model was built around that $3 cost, well, you're already sunk. So what's all this extra stuff? Well, it's a whole chain of costs. You've got the packaging, the trucking to the port in China, the actual ocean freight, insurance, customs duties, taxes, port fees over here. The list goes on and on. You have to account for every single penny. Okay, that brings us to pitfall number 2, and this one's a big one. It's all about how you actually send money to your supplier. Because let me tell you, wiring money is easy. Getting it back if something goes wrong, that's nearly impossible. So picture this. You find a supplier, they seem great, super friendly, and then they say, okay, just wire us 100% of the money and we'll get started. To a beginner, that might sound okay, but what you've just done is hand over all of your cash and all of your negotiating power before you've seen a single thing. And this just lays it out so clearly. You see the high-risk column on the left? That's the amateur hour stuff. On the right, that's how the pros do it. You use a protected system like Alibaba Trade Assurance, and you never pay 100% upfront. The standard is something like 30% to start production, and the other 70% only after your goods have been inspected and approved. So here's your takeaway. This is a huge, blinking neon red flag. If a supplier you've never worked with before is pushing you for all the money up front, you need to hit the brakes hard. There's a reason they're pushing, and it's not a good one. Now, that final payment we just talked about, that's your leverage. And that brings us perfectly to pitfall number 3, assuming the product you saw in those gorgeous photos is the same one that's going to arrive at your door. Spoiler alert, it often isn't. And oh man, you hear all the excuses for skipping this step. The sample costs too much, or their photos look amazing, or the classic, what could possibly go wrong? This is what we call being penny-wise and pound-foolish. Trying to save a couple $100 on an inspection can cost you your entire investment. So what do you do instead? It's a simple, non-negotiable process. 1, you get a perfect golden sample to approve. 2, you create a super detailed spec sheet that lists out everything: materials, colors, measurements. And 3, you hire an independent inspector to check the goods before you release that final payment. I absolutely love this quote. It's the perfect way to think about it. An inspection isn't an expense, it's an insurance policy. And believe me, it is the cheapest insurance you will ever buy for your business. All right, moving on to our 4th financial pitfall. This one is powerful, it's almost hypnotic. It's the trap of chasing the absolute cheapest price you can find. So, you've done your homework, you've gotten 10 quotes for your product. 9 of them are all pretty close, right? Maybe between $3 and $3.50. But then, there's one. One supplier comes in way lower, at $2.20. For a beginner, that feels like you've just hit the jackpot. But here's the thing about that price.
There's always a reason it's so low. It usually means they're using cheaper, lower quality materials, their communication is terrible, or worse, if there's a problem, they will just disappear. That cheap supplier almost always ends up being the most expensive mistake you'll ever make.
So the key here is a total mindset shift. You have to stop asking who's the cheapest and start asking who gives me the best overall value. That means a good price, yes, but also good quality, good communication, and reliability. You're looking for a partner, not just a low price. And that brings us to our fifth and final pitfall. This one is all about how misjudging time and money can absolutely wreck an otherwise solid deal. This is where so many new importers really get into trouble. Now, this timeline right here is a huge reality check. Most beginners think, oh, I'll order it and have it in a month. The reality, from the moment you start looking for a supplier to the day the goods are actually in your warehouse, you are looking at 3 to 4 months, at a minimum. And that's if things go well. So why does that matter so much? Because it has a massive impact on your cash flow. Your money is tied up for months and months in inventory that is sitting in a factory or on a boat. If you haven't budgeted for that, you can run out of cash before you even sell your first unit. So to pull this all together, here it is. This is your 5-point checklist. Before you send one single dollar, run through this list. Do I know my true landed cost? Am I using a protected payment? Have I scheduled an inspection? Am I choosing based on value? And can my business actually survive this timeline? So as we wrap up, I want you to really think about this. Looking at these 5 pitfalls, which one is your biggest fear? Which one feels like the one you're most likely to fall into? And then what's the very first step you can take right now to make sure it doesn't happen?